Okay, Sutra 334. Pratipad, the effulgent light, brilliant conception, intuitive knowledge. What a beautiful word, pratipad, faculty of spiritual perception, va or sarvam, everything, like sarvam gasnati, all limbs. So sarvam, everything. Through the faculty of spiritual perception, the yogi becomes a knower of all knowledge. Let's just see what the other commentators have to say. Or by intuition comes knowledge of everything. In the knowledge that dawns by spontaneous intuition through a life of purity. That's a kind of a loaded word in the Western use. All the powers come by themselves. That's interesting. All the powers come by themselves. That's Karela. Heartfront says, all these accomplishments may be realized in a flash of spontaneous illumination. That's also interesting. That concept of the flash of spontaneous illumination is often referred to in the Buddhist tradition as well. Knowledge of the all can be reached through intuitive perception. The knowledge that dawns by spontaneous enlightenment through a life of purity, all the person. By the power of Pratibha, all knowledge. From knowledge known as Pratibha, intuition, everything becomes known. So I thought that Mehta had a very interesting commentary on this. I'm going to read you a little bit of them, of Rohit Mehta's observations. Oh, sorry, hold on. Okay. Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. So, but I'll read you a little bit of this. The word used in the sutra is pratibha, through intuitive insight. The word has reference to the earlier sutra where Patanjali speaks of siddha darshana, or clear perception. He speaks here of the greater dependability of intuition than of clairvoyance. While clairvoyance may give clear perception, it is intuition which enables one to have right perception. People seem to regard intuition as something erratic and undependable. Some mistake it for some sort of subjective feeling, while others brush it aside as a hunch. There's also a general feeling that regards intuition as something unscientific. This is so because most often impulsiveness is mistaken for intuition. That's interesting. So distinguishing between impulse, where you're just like acting without thought, and intuition itself. To act on an impulse is not to act under the direction of intuitive insight. It is an approach in which emotion predominates. It contains an emotional reaction of the habitual pattern where impulse arises from the accumulated past. So it's very much about samskaras. It's very much about how samskaras inform much of our action, decisions, perceptions, experience of truth. And so then when we are able to shed or overcome or burn the seeds of the samskaras, then our experience of the present is perhaps clearer and more illuminated. There's also, I think it was in Bryant, where he talks about this is really a result of sattva. So according to the yoga tradition, intuition is associated with the preliminary phase of omniscience. It is an inherent attribute of pure sattva. So when we're able to kind of tamp down or balance out the rajas and the tamas, that fiery activity and that lethargy, or that sort of steadfastness, that is inertia, then we're able to arrive, we're able to exist in a more sattvic place, which is often associated with translucence, clarity, lightness. So I would love to hear from you all about how do you distinguish in your life, in your day-to-day experience, when you are acting from intuition or when you're acting from samskaras, impulse, emotions, past experiences, and I think most markedly past traumas. You know, and so many of you know the story of what happened with Bob Baxter. He was at this march, and young woman who brushed past him felt something. It was probably the bag hanging off of his wheelchair, felt something and assumed that it was his hand grabbing her. And so that's a perception based on past experience, based on past trauma. And because logically it was impossible, his hand was driving his wheelchair. But this is what she perceived. And so I think things like that happen quite often, where we think, the example that's given in the sutras is you see a rope and you mistake it for a snake. And just things like that happen all the time. It's just part of human nature. But then as yoga practitioners, how do we operate more from this pratibha, this intuition? I mean, this sutra is very, kind of hyperbolic, isn't it? By intuition comes knowledge of everything. Through the faculty of spiritual perception, pratibha, the yogi becomes the knower of all knowledge. So it's a very grandiose statement. It's a very grandiose assertion. And yet, what is it telling us? How do we apply this to our day-to-day lives? So yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts about, like, what is the difference between impulse and intuition? What have you experienced? What have you observed? What have you noticed in your day-to-day life? How does it, what clues does it give you about your samskaras? What clues does it give you about your gunic state, about which of the three gunas you are operating from, or which is predominating in any given moment?
Good morning, everyone. This is Dawn.
Hi, Dawn.
Good morning. I would say for me, I feel like I can tell the difference between that like spontaneous enlightenment versus the the impulsive reaction. And one, when I would be walking, I didn't have a car for a long time, and I would walk and walk and walk and walk and walk and walk, and then something would just come to me that just made so much sense and put so much together, and formed a foundation for forgiveness for a past trauma or whatever. But that would happen when I would be walking, when I would be praying, when I would be practicing like martial arts, or if we've been in a class when before COVID and everything, we would have some of these longer classes, and they would come to me. Then also when I'd be driving sometimes to and from a long time, something would come where it would just all fall together and bring the past and make so much sense of the future, and just find like a calm peace. And versus my reactions of impulse, where I really believe that anytime I have an attachment to an outcome, like we had a funeral service yesterday for one of my Tao sisters, and it's like I had to get from Lansing to here, and it was like traffic the whole time, and I was like, we have to go. And then the tub went out, and we didn't have water, so we were all looking like crazy. And so it's like I wanted us to like be on time, look a certain way, you know, and I started to like have like a sense of panic versus, and I felt that and I remembered it in other times, and I remembered that's the opposite of doubt. And so then I had to calm my butt down. Um, and then also, you know, just like mundane things like, oh, we have a hole in our ceiling now, and I don't want like rats or mice to come into my house. So I'm trying to like close it up before the people come over and to, you know, do all that. So not be feisty and angry or panicky. That's when I can tell the difference. I'm being impulsive and reactionary because I'm attached to some mundane outcome
That's
versus it
really
just flows.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And that attachment to the outcome, so of course, the one of the main gists of Bhagavad Gita is, and maybe one day we'll devote ourselves to that text, um, is about detachment from the fruits of our labor. And so yeah, I think that's a really good clue, Don, that when we are really attached to like, oh, it's got to happen this way, or we've got to get this result, then it warps our perception, it warps our ability, it stunts our intuition. And then I think also what you pointed out, that often when we have these insights that come from intuition, we feel calm. We feel calm, we feel uh, at peace, we feel a sense that everything is going to be okay. And often when we're acting from impulse, it's like our hearts are racing. We might feel angry. We might feel scared. That we're coming from a place of worry or anxiety or fear, rather um, than a place of detachment and calmness. So yeah, I think those are really helpful, Don. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Abba.
I've been in situations that my intuition has been in like complete opposite of my impulses at the same time. And for me, it shows itself in reasoning. Where my impulses come from a lot of reasoning, but the intuition is just is. For instance, with my brother, I've been going through a lot of difficulties. The impulses and reasoning makes them really complicated, but the intuition is very calming in relation to the base of our relationship or the intuitive space we are in together. It's like my pains, my worthy pains, being triggered by him, but in an intuitive space, I see a profound, infinite love between us.
Yeah, beautiful. This is also your observation, Abba, is making me think of the layers of consciousness, the constitution of chitta, and how buddhi is that part of our consciousness that is closest to purusha. And so when we're operating from that layer of buddhi, rather than ahamkara, which is I shape, or manas, which is more sort of like the emotional body, then there's an understanding that comes that ahamkara and manas might not have been able to grasp on their own. What you said about reasoning is interesting, and I wonder how Ava's observation about reasoning relates to what we've been discussing in terms of the Yoga Sutra study with Dr. Ranganathan. So he talks about explication and reasoning as the antidote, or not the antidote, but as a counteraction of interpretation. So is there a way in which we can make our reasoning coming from buddhi rather than coming from ahamkara? Maybe it has something to do with what Don pointed out about attachment. Like if I'm attached to a certain result, then my reasoning is going to be based on that result that I'm seeking, that I'm really like committed to. And so then maybe that's not really reasoning. You know, maybe that is more ahamkara, ego, manas, my mind kind of playing tricks on me. Yeah.
I think in progressive spaces, especially in relation to sexual harassment or gender, that becomes very complicated because we are exposed to this like Western thoughts of how things should be. And when they're not that way, in relation, for instance, how brother responds to me as a woman and how that triggers my, responses to hierarchy
Yeah.
and the schooling that I have to learn.
Yeah.
The reasoning connects to a very specific abstract way of doing things that's being presented as correct.
Yeah.
And that I see it related to what you're speaking of, to understand where that schooling connects to my Woody space.
Yeah. Yeah, because from a patriarchal or colonial model, then the reasoning is based on patriarchy and colonization. Yeah. And so we have to break down those oppressive structures before we can actually think clearly.
Actually, I'm saying in response to that. So the oppressive exists.
Yeah.
My response is structured in a very specific framework. And that is my reasoning.
Can you say more about that?
Yes, for instance, if I am thinking I'm unheard,
Yeah.
or I'm saying something that he reflects upon from an authority entitled space,
Yeah.
authoritarian space,
Yeah.
then I'm switching to my learnings of what I need to do now to
I
not
see.
allow the pressure to happen on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that breaks the deeper connection that I might have from my internal space with what is going on, rather than using the toolkits and instrument that I have in the realm of impulse and reasoning.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain.
Yeah. Okay, this is really great. I love this conversation. I would like to move on. I feel like there's a lot that needs to be said. And so maybe we'll continue this sutra next week because it's bringing up a lot. Let's do that. Let's spend 2 weeks on this one. All right.
This would be a great thing that people could write their commentaries and we could share them like on social media or in email thread together too. 'Cause
Yeah.
I saw so many people on the screen be like,
Yeah, I know. I can feel it. I can feel the hands going up. And so I think that's a really great suggestion. If anybody wants to take a few minutes at some point in the next few days to jot down some notes and email them to me, then I can compile them. Or actually, better yet, start a Google Doc, all right? Somebody start a Google Doc. It doesn't have to be me, all right? Sovereignty.
good job.
We should have a sutra Google Doc.
Pardon me?
We should have a sutra.
We should have a Sutras Google Doc. Yes. So anybody, go ahead. All right, let's chant it. Pratibhadva sarvam. Okay? Pratibhadva sarvam. Pratibhadva sarvam. Pratibhadva sarvam. Pratibhadva sarvam. Oh, that's a good one. Okay. Stretch your legs straight.